Good evening, YouTubeistas. This is a Friday night. It's March 22nd. I spent the morning at H&R Block doing taxes. So I'm thinking when I get to these pictures here of meeting with Bradford, that was, I told him, let me buy you lunch. This is what I call a business lunch. Because if the IRS, if you're listening, oops, I went the wrong direction. This is how I, expense myself is I meet up with geometers. I tried to become a director of open source at Reed College. I filed a job application, but I had a completely imaginary idea of what would be involved. I pictured myself like driving to Portland Airport and picking up dignitaries in the open source community, because I think of the open source community as a global network of like dignitaries, people that I feel privileged to hang out with, and they'd be coming to Reed College, and I'd pick up Guido, benevolent dictator for life of Python. That was before he gave up the position. So Bradford is all about folding circles. You could say if origami had spawned a sub-branch where you start with a circular piece of paper instead of a square, that would sort of be where Brad begins. But as soon as you do that, as soon as you get away from the unit square, you can't call it origami anymore. So I feel like his most natural audience, probably in Japan, doesn't materialize as much as it could because of really PR, like spin doctor problems. You call it origami, but it's not. It's like you get into a lexical tangle. As I was chatting with Patrick the other day, I think nomenclature does matter. And if we pick the wrong language, like an awkward way of thinking, it can take forever to get around to some key important insights. Mathematicians know this. They know that notation matters. So if you want to find more about what Bradford talks about, Math Future is a Google group. I think it has a public archive. I've been posting there. It's pretty dormant these days, but it's where you can find some Bradford Hanson Smith writings. Okay. Now I wanted to go back to my dog object. I'm going to jump to Facebook just to show you this cool dog. Cool picture, got me thinking. My dog class, rather. So the last two videos, I've been hyping the dot operator. And I've been saying you really know you've crossed into the 21st century when your math class actually includes the dot operator as important. It's a computer language thing, yes, but in this world, computer languages are part and parcel of what it means to learn mathematics. So of course you know about the dot operator. And if this is 2019, so this is science fiction. But maybe someday looking back, it's like, oh yeah, dot operator, blah, blah. I knew about that. I knew that. So the dot operator, I'm jumping to Spider now. This is an interactive development environment for Python. And notice over here on the left, I've got my class going, my dog. And what I've done is I'm intercepting the use of the dot operator. I'm going to be able to detect when the dot is used. And this is what Python uses special names for. I call them ribs, right? So with a double underline. Because Pythons and snakes in general have lots of ribs, so if you spell it like this with a double underline, dunder ribs, it's kind of a mnemonic that helps you sort of understand that if you're making a Python class, it looks kind of like this over and over, right? So I could create a lot of ribs. This is not, actually I don't think Python will puke on this, even though I'm using the same method name over and over, because it's just building a dictionary under the hood, so what's the problem? But I could call these rib 1, rib 2, right? The idea is this kind of anatomically actually looks like a Python looks. You actually look at a Python, you'll see that it has a backbone and then lots of ribs. So I can actually create a python from this and try to. Now, rib is not actually a real special name, but I could still call it. Still doesn't complain about that. All that aside, that's just mnemonic stuff like memory palace stuff. Look at the code here on the left and see that if I create now a dog of this type, an instance of the dog type, and try to assign it, say, a color equals brown, what's going to happen is this triggers the set attribute method. And what it does is it prints back, oh, you're trying to set the attribute color. And now if I ask, what is this dog's color? It's going to not give me back brown, but, oh, you want to get the color. And why did it print that twice? I think this code is an older version, that's why. Sorry to be confusing. Let's recreate that dog now. I believe the code is better synchronized. So let's get the color back. Yeah, it just prints it once now. So in an earlier version, I was printing the attribute that we were trying to get twice for some reason. I think it's worth keeping it this way to show you my mistake because it's a common problem in using an IDE that your REPL will be out of date and that the code you're looking at is actually showing you something different from the objects that you're using. You have to have the discipline to recompile this code once you make a change. And I get into that when I teach my class, which of course is coming up shortly. I may be dropping back in terms of video frequency here on YouTube because I'm going back behind a firewall. Speaking of firewall, this is a video you probably can't see now, but it's at the polling house, me talking to an audience about tensegrity. That came out pretty well, I think. All right, we'll talk to you later and enjoy. I'm going to the polling house tonight to experience the Equinox celebration. It's a low-key affair. It's not a big deal. We have a potluck and celebrate 4 times a year the change in seasons and so on. And this is tax season for me, as I said. So this morning it was H&R Block. All right, see you guys. Talk to you soon.